Today we have the pleasure of being joined by the one and only Arda Ocal. Arda is a pioneer in the Toronto scene. You might know him from his run in the WW as Kyle Edwards. Arda, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Yeah, Tyler, thanks for having me.
So I want to get right into it with you, man, because you've done so much cool stuff in your career. And let's just start right at the beginning. How is it that you became a fan of professional wrestling?
Yeah, like many, I saw it on TV, just fell in love with it instantly, and it was something that it clicked with me right away. And as you mentioned, I grew up in Toronto, so I saw a lot of Maple Leaf Wrestling. I'm a kid of the 80s, so I saw primarily the World Wrestling Federation at the time, and I just fell in love with the characters. Like, it just sang to me, and it was very entertaining to me, and that was the rock and wrestling era, so I gravitated to larger than life characters like Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man Randy Savage, and a lot of that talent from the 80s are still household names today, even decades later, because they were they resonated so well with the audience. And so it stuck with me my entire life. But honestly, I never really thought that it could be a job. Like, when I was watching wrestling, I did appreciate the wrestling in ring, but really the people I was paying attention to more were the people on the microphone, the holy trinity, as I call them, the ones that I idolized growing up. It wasn't the athletes in the ring, although I respected what they were doing. To me, it was Mean Gene Okerlund, it was Howard Finkel, it was Gorilla Monsoon, and then afterwards it was Jim Ross. Those were the people that I looked at and said, wow, they have the coolest jobs in the world, but also they were able to talk to the wrestlers and share in those experiences and create some great moments and laying the soundtrack to some of our favorite matches. So growing up, they were my heroes, really. And I really didn't think that I would ever be able to even sniff the vicinity of a job like that, because I never knew how it was even possible. And I was always programmed, really, being the son of immigrant parents, I always thought I'd just have to get a normal job, whether it's a lawyer or a doctor or engineer or something like that. And eventually, once I started to ask questions and learn, I thought, you know what, this might be something that I want to pursue now that I understand how it works. And I'm glad I did.
Well, and that's awesome too, because you're mentioning those names behind the microphone, and then eventually you got to come full circle and do that. Talking about Maple Leaf Wrestling, one of my favorites was always Billy Red Lions. You can't hit that. Don't you dare miss it. I love that every week. So that's really neat that eventually you got to kind of be in a similar role that a guy like Billy Red Lions got to do.
Yeah, and a lot of us, like, really Canadian specific, right? Like, when I was at WWE, I used the line "in the meantime" and "in between time." And that was from Ed Whalen in Stampede Wrestling.
That's right.
And it was a very, to borrow a line, essentially. I mean, that was an homage on my part, because I wanted to add a little bit of Canadiana into my delivery and into my presentation. So I thought that was a really, cute way to do it. And, that's what wrestling is built on borrowing, and augmenting and the circle of life, so to speak. So, but it's always cool, especially when you grow up in Canada. There's a little bit of uniqueness sometimes, right? Like,
so I kind of just want to circle back around and just talk about your career a little bit here. And I want to kind of go back right to the beginning again. How is it that you broke into the independent scene and got your foot in the door in the industry?
So I went to university in Canada. I went to the University of Waterloo. I got a degree in math and business. While I was there, I did a lot of media work. So I did the local radio station, the local newspaper, etc. But then after university, I got a desk job. I was a project manager for several years. And nights and weekends, I would spend it at Rogers TV, which was a local public access channel, doing the same thing, learning about every department, etc. And that's where I was really catching the bug for media, not really realizing it. But all the while, I also started to attend independent wrestling events and starting to understand that there was more out there than WWE. And so I started to attend events. And then slowly but surely, I just grew the confidence to ask if I could help out. So I started helping set up chairs around the halls or the auditoriums that the independent wrestling shows were happening at. And then eventually I just started to learn. Like, I just asked a bunch of questions, and luckily there was a local promoters in Toronto that took me under their wings and just taught me the ways of the wrestling business. And then eventually I started doing backstage interviews, and then started doing ring announcing, and then commentary. Like, it was really just a slow build of earning trust of people around me, especially in wrestling, because back then, you didn't want to It wasn't like the internet was in full swing, obviously, so people knew about the inner workings of wrestling and everything, but it was still pretty guarded. It's not like you're just going to go and tell people, you know what I mean, or just invite them into your family right away. So I had to earn trust, and I kept showing my face, and people realized that I really wanted it, and I just worked my way up from there. And then eventually in 2008, I started to promote my own shows. I did a few trips to the Canadian Arctic. We went to Iqaluit, Nunavut for several shows, which was incredible. That was probably one of the most proud things, the most proud I've been in organizing events, because we did a lot of work on the ground there as well. So it wasn't just we went up there and did the shows. We went to every school, did talks. We went into the juvenile hall and did talks as well to motivational speaking with our talent. We did a big media tour. We went to the local grocery store and did appearances, etc. Like, we really, really did a lot of community outreach. We did a local event at the rec center where we just had kids playing with the wrestlers, like teaching them like Arctic games, like leg wrestling and high kick, and there were a lot of fun games that the people were teaching us, and it was just a ton of fun, but also really meaningful stuff. Like, we got a lot of great comments from local people saying, you know, usually people just come up here as a cash grab and then go away, but you made a really meaningful impact. And it really showed. Like, people showed up for the shows, and it was a lot of fun. And we had some great names with us. We had Bobby Roode and Rhino for the first shows. We had Christian while he was in between TNA and WWE that one time, who came up. And then, it was just, I'm very, very proud of that. And then also we did a cross Canada tour in 2008 where we went from Toronto to Saskatchewan and all the way back, which was a trip and a half. So that was a lot of fun. I just wanted myself and the fellow independent wrestlers who'd never been on a trip like that before to just experience life on the road. So we did it in August, and it was just a blast. And, some of the shows were great. Some of the other shows didn't draw so well, but, you learn, live and you learn. But, so that was basically sort of my foray. And then eventually got hooked up. One of our wrestlers, Sebastian Suave, started a promotion called Smash Wrestling, which is still on today. It's one of the premier independent promotions in Canada, and I did some commentary for him, and helped out on his shows as well. And that was really sort of my foray in wrestling in Canada.
I'm glad you brought up the Nunavut trip, because that's definitely something I wanted to talk to you about, and just something I kind of want to tip my cap to you too. Is you do so much great charity work. I think that's something that I really admire about you. Like I said, I was going to bring up Nunavut, but we already touched on that, so I kind of want to move forward a little bit. You got the pleasure of hosting the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame with Howard Finkel. We recently lost the Fink, unfortunately. Can you just share some memories of working with the Fink and just what kind of a person he was?
Yeah, when I got to WWE, I spent at least once a week in his office. They had the whole outthink the Fink. So I'd literally, like, my hello to him wouldn't be like, hey, Fink, how's it going? I would walk into his office and just, like, give him a trivia question, and he loved it. I'd be like, who was the Intercontinental Champion in August 1991 or something like that? You know what I mean? And he would just like have the answer right away because he's the Fink. And then we would talk about the Mets, and then we would talk about wrestling. Like, he was just a great guy, just tremendous. And I really enjoyed my time with Fink. And honestly, even Mean Gene too. Like, I never had a chance to meet Gorilla. JR was always wonderful to me. JR, actually, I reached out to him early on. I just found his email online, and I just reached out to him early on. And I said, listen, much like wrestlers go to wrestling school, I will pay you to do an announcing school because I just want to learn. And he said, I'm not going to take your money, but you can ask me any questions you want. Wow. Which you really didn't have to do. Like, I mean, JR is like a legend, right? Like, he's, as many people would consider, except if you ask him, because he would say Gordon Soley, but like, people consider him to be the greatest wrestling voice ever, right? So like, he doesn't have to spend time on me, who's just trying to build my name up, but he did willingly, and he was just so nice about it. So I have a lot of great memories with those three, especially Gene. Gene, when I was at WWE, he was doing Vintage Collection, and he'd be in studio in Stamford, like, I don't know, twice a month. So it was always a fun trip to the Capitol Grill when Mean Gene was around.
Well, there's another name I want to bring up to you that I'm sure you've got some fun trips with, and that's your friendship with a friend of our show, Jimmy Korderas. How did you and Jimmy kind of get linked up? And can you talk about your friendship with him? Because I love watching you guys together. I think you guys are so entertaining together. You guys really kind of bring out the best of each other. So how did you and Jimmy kind of get linked up?
So he left WWE in 2009, and he started coming to the independent events, and we just instantly hit it off. We just, like, a friendship instantly grew. And how it started at the Score was, at the time there was Hardcore Sports Radio, which was a Sirius radio station, and I was doing right after wrestling, which became Aftermath, on the radio as well on Monday nights. And then the TV show was on Tuesdays to start, and then Tuesdays and Fridays as well. So I asked him, hey, why don't we just do a segment called Ask the Ref, where we just get people to send questions. And he's an invaluable resource because he was at WWE for 25 plus years. He was there for every major era: Attitude Era, Rock and Wrestling Era, the Ruthless Aggression, the PG Era, whatever eras you want to call them. Like, he was there. And he refereed every major superstar, and he was there for every major moment, from the Montreal Screwjob to the Monday Night Wars and whatever, right? So, like, he was there for everything. And so we got a lot of questions, and then eventually, when there was a need to fill in on the TV side, I brought up Jimmy's name. I said I really think he would be a great addition because he was there, and the Score agreed, and that's the rest is history for him. And he'd been on that show for a decade, which is amazing. I mean, the fact that Aftermath lasted that long, or has been on the air, like it started in December 2009.
Holy,
that's like, the TV shows don't get runs like that. You know what I mean? Like, for it to be on the air for a decade plus is amazing. Like, that's just a testament to how much Canadian wrestling fans are so passionate about wrestling. And it was a formula that worked. And Jimmy's a large part of that because he's essentially been the backbone of the show for a very long time.
Yeah, it's that credibility, right? Like you said, 25 years in the business. And the chemistry between you guys, it just shows everywhere. I had the pleasure of meeting you guys at the Chinlock wrestling events, which are great events for great causes as well.
Jan Murphy's the worst. I hate that guy. Jan Murphy.
My co-host Mike, he'll probably say the same thing. He's a friend of Jan's as well. So. Those Chinlock shows are fantastic. You can just see the fun that everybody's having there, between you and Jimmy and RJ City. And I'm really hoping that they can continue to run once the world kind of settles down, and hopefully we can get you back a part of those as well.
For sure, absolutely, I love it. Jan's the best, so I'd love to.
So as I start to wrap up with you a little bit here, I got to talk about your time in the WWE. Do you have any memories, your first memories of meeting Vince McMahon, and how you even came to get signed with the company?
Yeah, so I auditioned several times, like I mentioned, and finally it was my birthday, actually, that I finally made the call, and they said, okay, we're going to really seriously look at this, and then eventually I ended up getting signed, which was, very nice to hear. And it felt like a dream come true. Like, I'd been chasing something for so long, and that's why I tell people, like, chase your dreams. I'm a great example of this. Like, I'm not somebody that really should have made it, honestly. Like, I'm okay, but like, there are plenty of people out there that are more talented or more skillful or in a better position or whatever it is. But like, I just wouldn't take no for an answer. I just had that determination, and I worked hard at my craft, and I just wanted it so badly that I did. I remember one big piece of advice I got from someone at WWE was, stop doing wrestling. Like, if you want to work here, improve your portfolio outside of wrestling. And that's why after the Score, I went into weather. I completely took a 180, and I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I had a great job. I was in Vancouver doing the Weather Network on a national level. It was fantastic. I had a great job. But really, the only job that could pry me away from that was WWE, and that's the job I ended up getting. So when I moved, it was I had to do it because it's like, no, I'd been chasing this job for so long. I really have to go and see it out. My time at WWE was great. I don't have any regrets or complaints. I got burnt out. I'll be honest. Like, I guess after leaving WWE, I think the chapter was closed, and I don't think I was getting the same level of joy watching wrestling as I did when I was growing up. And so I kind of became a lapsed fan, and I didn't really watch much, at least for the first couple years, maybe 2-3 years afterwards, maybe a match here and there, but honestly, nothing like that. And I still don't watch regularly today, in all honesty. Even with AEW around, maybe I'll watch here and there, maybe a couple matches if my friends send, because I still have a lot of friends in wrestling. If they send me a match or, hey, watch my match or whatever, yeah, absolutely, of course, I support my friends, but it doesn't give me the same level of joy, and I'm not like as deep into the bubble as I used to be. But, I'm happy to be working with ESPN, thrilled to be working with ESPN and contributing. And part of that contribution these days is also wrestling. So it comes full circle, to do wrestling segments on SportsCenter and wrestling segments on Sports Nation. It's a thrill because it's almost like, hey, I get to play in this sandbox that I was in for so long and bring a unique perspective and bring my voice to it. So ultimately, it's though people might look at it and say, well, you didn't really get a chance at WWE. You were only there for 2 years and you really didn't get to do anything on Raw in the States. Like, I was on Raw in India, for example, or internationally, which was great. I enjoyed that a lot, but I didn't get that sort of, push or that visibility to the level of others. And that's fine. That's the way that it is. Some people make it, some people don't. I'm not bitter about it at all. I'm happy it happened. I'm happy where I am right now. And honestly, I'm in such a peaceful place and I'm happy for people's success there. And if WWE came back and said, hey, why don't we work on a project together? I'd say, awesome, sure. Let's talk about it. Like, it's weird. Like the wrestling industry often breeds bitterness with some people. Sometimes it's justified. Other times people are that's just the way that they are. Right. But like, I'm in such a great headspace. I have no bitterness towards anybody or anything in wrestling at all. And I look at it as a very fond, I look at it as a success story on how to chase your dreams. Absolutely. Like that's how I will look back on it when I tell the story of me making it to WWE. That to me is the most important part of that is you can take that story and you can take even the wrestling part out of it and just put whatever your dream is. And the determination, the persistence, the decisions, the hustle, the work ethic, all of that, if you look at it from that lens and put it towards your own dream and your own goal, that is a success story. Because there are very few people that get a job at WWE as an on-air talent. It's a very, very lucrative position for many people, but it's also a very difficult position to get. So the fact that I was even able to get it, and I'm going to say I'm definitely the first Turkish person of Turkish descent to get that job, maybe the first person of Muslim faith to get that job, and very few Canadians get a job like that too, right? And we've had a lot of success stories. Like look at Renee, like she's a fantastic success story, right? Like she's incredible. Like I know I worked with her for several years. She's unbelievably talented, right? So we've had a lot of success stories, but it's still very difficult to get those jobs. So that's why I look at it. In terms of meeting Vince McMahon, I only met him twice, honestly. The funny story that I have, though, and I've heard this from 3 different people. I choose to believe it. It may or may not be true, but I've heard it secondhand, okay? So people often ask me, how'd you get your name? Like, how'd you go from Arda Ocal to Kyle Edwards, right? So I get there. I knew my name was going to change. I didn't care. I was like, whatever. I know this is part of the gig. I'm cool with it. So my boss, Tom Carlucci, who's a fantastic human being, he was there for a very, very long time, like 20 years plus. His whole family at some point worked there as well. He tells me, look, your name's going to change. Let's put together a list. So with the international department, who have a lot of talented people, we put together this list. And obviously some people were like taking it more seriously than others. Like I was like, okay, you know what? I think there's like a 2 first name convention that happens here in WWE, like Tom Phillips, Justin Roberts, Josh Matthews, Michael Cole, Jim Ross, like whether it's their real name or not, like that seems to be like the convention that happens among many on-air talent. So I was like, okay, well, I'll do that. So I'll put like Ryan Randall on the list, or I'll put, I thought Turk would be a cool last name, kind of like an homage to my heritage, right? Yeah, and I thought my parents would love it too. So I was like, okay, Dan Turk or John Turk or something. I don't know. I just, Turk last name, I just put a bunch of Turk last names. And some people in the international department were like, Ray Donovan's on the list. And like Armin van Buren's on the list. So they're like picking real people's names and they're not taking it seriously at all. And I'm like, Armin van Buren, there's no way that I'm like, what do you think? Come on. So anyway, so we've all heard the stories that Vince McMahon is very hands-on. Like everything goes through Vince McMahon. And that's honestly one of the reasons why WWE's been successful, because there's only one cook in the kitchen, right? Like Vince McMahon is the be all and end all. Apparently, this includes what a lowly international announcer's name's going to be. So they're in this meeting where I can only assume that they're talking about like high level stuff, like what direction should we take the company? And here's some marketing pitches that we've received. And here's some investments that we should do. And what is the creative for WrestleMania, whatever. And then the topic comes to, all right, we hired this guy. His name is Arda, from Canada. We need to change his name. Here's the list. And so, like, I don't know. It just makes me laugh. And again, I've heard this from 3 different people. He takes the list and he looks at it, and everyone has a Vince McMahon impression, right? So he's like, huh, I don't like any of these names. You know what we need in this company? God damn it. We need a Kyle. So as soon as you hear that from Vince McMahon, like when Vince McMahon says something, it is gospel in WWE, right? So like, okay, my name is Kyle. Like that is 100% set in stone, apparently. So that's essentially how the name Kyle Edwards came to be, was because Vince McMahon was adamant that Kyle, we need a Kyle in this company. And well, I became a Kyle.
It's so strange if that's the name that just came.
I don't know where he came from. I don't know if he was watching a show and there was a Kyle on it. I have no idea where the inspiration for Kyle came from, but that's how I became Kyle.
That's an awesome story. That makes me laugh. You know, if they could have asked him that on the next day and your name could have been Frank. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
we don't have any Franks. Name him Frank. No, Kyle.
So you got to put in a lot of time in the studio and working there. And before the Ultimate Warrior passed away, he came up with the idea for the Warrior Award of Excellence and of Honor. And he wants to kind of give praise to those unsung heroes in the company that you don't hear about. You know, they've kind of taken that and put a different little spin on it. And I think it's wonderful what they do. But who are some of the actual unsung heroes that you got to work with that, you know, we probably don't know about, but they're the guys that are running that ship and helping produce the great product that we get to see on TV?
Yeah, there's so many people in different departments. There is like even the makeup department. You know, some people have been there for like 20 years, 25 years. There's so many people that have been at that company for a very long time, helping. You know, the cogs and the wheels. For example, Jill was my makeup artist, and she had done makeup for so many people over the decades. Like she's been there for a very long time, and you know, she's someone that deserves immense credit. She makes us look good, hides our wrinkles, makes us glow on camera. Not just the wrinkles, just everything. Like she's such a joy to be around. We would always bond over her daughter and how we were fellow nerds. Like just great conversations with her. The international department, I will often say, have a lot of like diamonds in the rough. I worked with so many producers there on shows that they were just so talented. Like I will say that WWE has among the best production staff in the entire media industry. They're very creative, they're very innovative, and oftentimes they have a very limited sandbox to work in. That's the other thing that people don't really understand, is that there are a lot of restrictions or rules that people have to work with within WWE, and for the producers to be able to do that, it is so impressive. So I find that the whole production staff, they really deserve a lot of credit, and they take a bow because a lot of what they produce is incredible.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. And I just want to say that as a big fan of yours for a long time, I want to thank you for coming on and doing this with us. Do you want to give the people a plug where we can see you right now? I know you mentioned you're doing some stuff with ESPN. Any social media where people can follow you?
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at Arda, ARDA. And if you've been watching, if you're a Canadian wrestling fan and you've been watching Right After Wrestling or Aftermath all these years and remember me from those times, thanks a lot. I still get messages from people saying, hey, I watched you back in the day. I really appreciate it. I mean, it was some of the time that I look back on my life very fondly, and even from WWE, if you remember me as Kyle Edwards or whatever, I appreciate it so much. Like, just people would be willing to stick around and just keep checking out what I'm doing today. And, you know, sometimes I'll dabble back into wrestling. So just follow me on Twitter. And I sincerely appreciate all the good vibes and the good messages that I receive, and people who've been with me since the very beginning. So thank you.
Perfect. Well, the best of success to you in the future, my friend.
Thanks for having me.